The forest is calm. I walk slowly, feeling the snow crunch under my feet. The cold bites my skin, but somehow I appreciate it. Infinite whiteness spreads between the trees, and the snow in the farthest forest looks impeccable, almost ethereal. However, I honestly don't know how I got to this place. I remember being at home, safe, surrounded by everyday life. Everything changed when a group of armed men broke into my home. They wore masks. I thought they were coming to rob me. But instead, they took me. I don't know how much time passed. When I woke up, I was trapped inside a bag of potatoes. My numb body barely responded, and the only source of energy I had was that minimal reserve of food. Luckily, I was wearing cold weather clothing, but I don't know if it'll be enough to survive these temperatures. Ice accumulates on my face. I feel my own snot turn into frozen crystals, and every movement hurts. The cold is not just a sensation. It's a searing pain that eats away at my bones. I'm beginning to suspect that they left me here for a reason. It was not a simple abandonment. Someone wanted me to survive. But why? What is so special about my life to justify this? My thoughts are interrupted by a dull sound, almost imperceptible at first, but intensifying with each second. The ground begins to vibrate under my feet. Then the shaking becomes stronger, almost as if the entire forest is waking up. Steps. It feels like steps. But that's just it. It's not human footsteps. It's something much bigger. The shaking is rhythmic, heavy, intense enough to make trees creak, and the birds flee. Something huge is moving between the mountains. Something that shouldn't exist. Something is approaching. I didn't understand what was happening. My breathing became heavy, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I heard it. Deep, guttural sounds, like the gasps of a colossal creature. Between the snow and the trees, something was sliding stealthily, its movement accompanied by a harsh creak, like breaking wood. And that's when I heard a roar. It wasn't deafening or violent, but low and prolonged. An almost familiar sound, like the growl of an empty stomach. For a moment, I thought I was losing my mind. The trees swayed slowly, carried by a hidden presence. Between the mountains, something titanic advanced, with each step shaking the earth beneath my feet. Then, in the intense snowstorm, at the highest point of the hills, I saw him. Damn. What the hell is that thing? If I hadn't taken a photo, no one would believe me. They would say I was on drugs or something worse. But there it was, a huge silhouette emerging from the blizzard, defying everything my mind could possibly process. At first, I thought it was a horse, a monstrously large horse with titanic musculature, its mere presence dwarfing the entire forest. His knee stuck out above the tallest pine trees, and not even the snow that fell on his back could blur his grotesque shape. But something was wrong. That thing wasn't just huge. It was bony. The skin stretched over the skeleton like a dry, fragile canvas. His ribs were visible, even from the distance, marking a silhouette. A silhouette of extreme hunger. Like it hasn't eaten in ages. I blinked several times, trying to process what I saw. What at first seemed like a gigantic horse began to distort before my eyes. Its shape was not stable. It wasn't natural. Then I understood it. It wasn't a horse. Not even an ordinary beast. It was something much worse. Its torso elongated unnaturally, merging into a grotesque humanoid form. A sickly skeletal torso that protruded from its back, as if the creature itself were trapped in an endless mutation. It didn't have a horse's head. Instead, an abomination of rotting flesh and exposed organs writhed with every movement. His skin was ashen deep in death, his bones protruding from beneath a thin, dry membrane. Many arms. Too many arms. They moved erratically as if the creature was reaching for something invisible. But worst of all, what made the cold in my body become insignificant compared to the terror. It didn't have eyes, and yet he could see. Every fiber of my being told me that this thing was looking for something to devour, and I was the only hot thing in this icy graveyard. Took a photo. I took a photo, and the image itself describes more than millions of words. The image has a haunting atmosphere with a huge spectral figure barely visible among the snow and forest. The creature appears to have a prominent bone structure and multiple arms, a distortion in lighting, making it appear like a ghostly apparition, as if it does not completely belong in this world. The environment around the creature was a nightmare landscape. The blizzard raged loudly, but around them, the air seemed thicker, almost static, as if the weather itself was afraid to get too close. The snow on the ground was interrupted by cracks, some recent, as if something had stepped with unimaginable force, breaking the frozen layer of the forest. The forest which once stood majestic and serene. Something seemed dwarfed by his presence. The trees closest to the creature were twisted, their trunks split at possible angles as if something had effortlessly pushed or crushed them. The bark was darkened, as if simple contact with that being had burned or rotted it. The air was thick with an unbearable stench, a mixture of decomposing flesh and something else. Something that was neither human nor animal. A dry, old smell like that of an abandoned ossuary. No animals were hurt. There were no sounds of life, only the crunching of the snow under the weight. His weight and those guttural gasps that made the ground vibrate with each exhalation. But the worst was the feeling. A pressure in the chest, a primitive instinct to flee, to not be there, as if the presence of that abomination altered something in reality itself, as if the entire world recognized that this thing should not exist. And yet, there it was. The creature began to sniff the air, with a disturbing ferocity, as if it could detect every vibration in the environment. Before I could react, its head turned abruptly so fast that I almost thought it would break. He looked at me, if that's even the way you want to put it. I don't know how, but he did. His gaze pierced the darkness, knowing exactly where I was, and a deep terror took hold of me. He raised his finger at me, pointing, and in a raspy, cavernous voice said,
"I'll give you 3 seconds.
His hair absolutely paralyzed me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't think, and then he started counting.
1.
The air became thick, heavy as if everything around me was collapsing. I was completely shocked. Time had stopped.
2.
The word dragged from his throat, as if it were a condemnation. In that instant, fear shot me to the edge of the cliffs, and I ran with a speed I didn't know I was capable of. My breathing was agonizing. I felt like my legs were breaking under the effort, and for a moment, I was afraid of falling into the void, towards the sharp rocks. Just then, the creature paused. He took a deep breath and then said with a frightening calm,
3.
The sound of his voice was like an omen of death. At the same instant, a monstrous roar tore through the silence, so deep and so savage that I felt as if the ground itself was shaking. It was not a roar from any known animal. It was something else, something that seemed to come from the very depths of the abyss. A sound that pierced my soul, a roar of something that did not belong in this world, and with that roar, I knew it was still close, lurking, waiting for the moment when my strength gave out. Despite having advanced several meters and fallen from the cliff, the unmistakable sound of a horse breathing heavily and frantically continued to echo in my ears. He galloped at full speed, his heavy breath filling the air with the sense of impending doom. That thing had bought me a little time, seconds, as it roared, but I knew even that wouldn't save me. Fear was taking over me, a fear so deep that it made my blood run cold. Shit. The sound of galloping grew closer, like a miniature earthquake, shaking the earth beneath my feet. I could feel the ground shake as I continued to fall, the abyss spinning around me, the wind cutting into my face with each turn. I swear to God, despite having run several meters, in the blink of an eye, that thing was right behind me, too close, too close. As soon as it touched the ground, my legs moved on. Instinct. I kept running without thinking, breathless, running for my life. I took refuge among the trees, trembling, trying to hide, but I knew it was useless. That thing didn't need to run. It didn't need to make noise. When his paws touched the ground, he began to walk. But it was not a normal walk, no. He walked with an unnatural speed, as if gravity had no power over him. His walk was completely opposite to that of any horse. Instead of moving his front legs first, he used his hind legs to propel himself forward, a movement so grotesque it chilled my heart. That explained how he had reached the edge of the cliff so quickly while I was falling, how he had descended at that terrifying speed down the steep hill of hundreds of meters. My mind could barely process it, as if every step of that thing broke the laws of nature itself. It used its hind legs to propel itself, but instead of moving its front legs like any living being, it repeated the same process, a movement like a jump, but in a completely erratic and monstrous way. With each leap seemed to defy the laws of biology, an aberration of nature. My mind couldn't process it. I didn't have time to stop and think about how that was even possible. My only priority was to escape, because that thing, as big as a small building, was going to find me sooner or later. I tried to flee, my legs already exhausted, my mind fighting panic, but there was no time. There was no time for anything. As soon as I made the decision to run, it caught me. Shit! The strength of his grip was such that I felt my bones crack like dry branches. The sound of the breakup was so clear, so brutal, that it made me scream silently. The tree I had taken refuge in, my last attempt to hide, was crushed like a simple twig under its weight. The creature held me in its claw with terrifying ease, as if I were an insect. His mouth opened with monstrous slowness, revealing a deep darkness within, a void that seemed to devour all the light around him. And when I saw his teeth, I felt the last vestiges of hope disappear. They were enormous, larger than those of any creature, and although they looked like molars, their size made them more terrifying, as if they were made to grind not only flesh but also souls. God, this is the end. I knew that the death penalty in the Soviet Union was cruel, but this was something different, something even the most evil mind could not have imagined. This wasn't just an ending, it was a true horror, a torment that no human being should face. In that moment, as the darkness closed in around me, I realized that not even terror had the words to describe what was about to happen. The man was never seen again, but this was the photo that was taken.